Hope everybody's having a great holiday season, a great Christmas season, because Christmas is supposed to be joyous, right? It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be exciting. I think if we're honest with ourselves, it's also very chaotic, right? It's very chaotic for my family this Christmas season. I've been sharing with Central over the last couple months, the last 6 months, about how Laura and I are teaching our oldest daughter, Avery, how to drive. And it has been an adventure, to say the least. But about 2 weeks ago, it hit an all-time high. We took Avery in for the big day for the big test. Yes, the driver's test. She's 16 now, so we took her in, and getting ready for this day, we were nervous because here's the deal. We needed Avery to get her driver's license, especially going into the holidays. I mean, it would be incredibly helpful to have the additional driver in the house. All the school pickups, all the cheer drop-offs and pickups, having Avery driving would be a huge blessing. So the night before the test, she's nervous, Laura and I are nervous, everyone's nervous, but we're gonna get a good night's sleep, we're gonna wake up early, we're gonna have a good breakfast, it's a Saturday morning, the test is at 11, we're gonna keep nerves calm, we're gonna try to calm them down. So we get up and we leave for the DMV about an hour early, because we're just thinking we're gonna have Avery drive. We're gonna have her get the extra practice in, coach her along the way, keep things calm, soft music playing in the car, just little tips. We pull into the DMV at 10:40 a.m. We're thinking we're gonna impress them with how early we are. They might as well pass her. We're 20 minutes early. We're gonna walk in. But as we get out of the car, my wife Laura asks, she goes, "Where's the paperwork that we need for Avery to check in for this appointment?" The essential paperwork, that's her hours logged with all her driving hours, notarized, registration, insurance, all these papers that start the test. They need them. They're sitting nicely in a folder on our kitchen counter at home. So I tell Laura and Avery, I'm like, you guys go in. You at least check in. They'll know we're not a no-show. I'm gonna run home and get the paperwork. It's now 10:42 a.m. I have 18 minutes to do a 20-minute round trip, what should be 20 minutes. So on the way out of the parking lot, I'm praying, God, all green lights, no slow drivers, help me get home quickly. And he does. I make great time on the way home. But as I pull up to the house, I'm trying to get the garage to open, and for whatever reason, the garage clicker isn't working. The remote isn't activating the garage. Nothing's happening. I messed with that for too long. I'm like, I gotta just go in another way. So I ran up to the front door. I tried putting the door code in over and over, but because I'm nervous, I keep hitting the wrong buttons, and then I get locked out of the front door. I have to wait a second for it to reset. I put in the code, calm down, run in. I'm looking for the paperwork, find the folder, rush back out to the car. Now the garage is open miraculously. For whatever reason, it opened up. So now I'm trying to get it closed. No time for that. I start to pull away from the house thinking I'm just gonna have to leave the garage door open, but I'm not that type of guy. I never leave the garage door open. In fact, if I'm 3 miles away from the house and I think I did, I'll turn around and go back just to make sure I didn't leave the garage door open. But we leave it open, and on the way back, I hit all of Nevada's slowest drivers, just everyone out for a Saturday morning cruise. I roll into the DMV parking lot at 11:02 a.m. Laura's been following my location the whole way there. She's out front. We do a perfectly timed handoff out the window of the car. I don't even stop it. I just keep rolling. She runs inside. We're only 2 minutes late. Crisis averted. Or so we thought. I park the car, walk inside. Now I'm trying to calm my nerves down. I'm trying to calm my anxiety down because I don't want to freak Avery out. I know she's probably already nervous from this whole paperwork debacle. I walk up to Laura and Avery in line. We check in with the clerk, and she says, "I don't see you on the 11 a.m. appointment list. I don't see your name." We said, "No, Avery, show her the text." We got a text confirmation. We made sure. She's like, "Oh, you got a text. Yeah, if you got a text, you signed up for the wrong appointment. Let me show you." And she turned her screen, and she's like, "When you go to make an appointment, you see this first button here. It says schedule a driver's license appointment." I said, "Yeah, that's what we're here for, a driver's license." She said, "No, you're here for a driver's test. If you scroll further down, you see schedule a driver's test appointment at the bottom of the screen." Laura's like, "You're kidding. Does this happen all the time?" She said, "Oh, this happens all day, every day." I'm thinking, I think we might have a problem here. If this happens all day, every day, maybe there's a clarity problem on the website, but I keep my mouth shut. She goes, don't worry, I'm gonna get you an appointment. I'm like, oh, this kind, beautiful human being, she's gonna help us out. She's getting us an appointment anyway. She must go to our church. And she goes, how does the middle of January look for you? I'm like, it sounds 2 months away. What do you mean, the middle of January? Is that the next appointment? She just looks at us with a big smile. I'm thinking, you would wipe that smile off your face if you knew the journey we'd been on for the last 6 months to get here, the last 24 hours of nerves. Woman, I left the garage door open to get here. But it didn't matter. There's no happy ending to this story. We have an appointment in January. And to add insult to injury, or I should say to add injury to insult, Avery breaks her ankle this last week. So our family has been in it this season. Avery's been in it this season, but she's keeping her head held high. She's doing a great job with keeping a positive attitude. But isn't that how life feels sometimes? Like just everything seems to be working against us. And it seems to be especially true around the holidays, right? Around this time of year. And that's why I love the story that we're gonna be unpacking today, because it's a story about a journey. One that had its fair share of chaos, its own drama, its own share of uncertainty. But along the way, the focus was on God. The focus was on worship specifically. So we're gonna be looking at Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. And it's the story of the wise men from the Christmas story. And I wanna go ahead and read the whole story together just so we fully understand it. When we get to the red word, say it out loud with us, but we're gonna start in verse 1. It says, Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the reign of King Herod. About that time, some wise men arrived from eastern lands arrived in Jerusalem, asking, where is the newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star as it rose, and we have come to worship him. And King Herod was deeply disturbed when he heard this, as was everyone in Jerusalem. So he called a meeting of the leading priests and teachers of religious law and asked, where's the Messiah supposed to be born? In Bethlehem, in Judea, they said, for this is what the prophet wrote. And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not least among the ruling cities of Judah. For a ruler will come from you who will be the shepherd for my people Israel. Then Herod called a private meeting with the wise men, and he learned from them the time when the star first appeared. Then he told them, go to Bethlehem and search carefully for the child. And when you find him, come back and tell me so that I can go and worship him too. This is kind of a wink, wink moment because Herod has no intention to worship the child, only bad intentions. After this interview, the wise men went their way, and the star they had seen in the east guided them to Bethlehem. It went ahead of them and stopped over the place where the child was. And when they saw the star, they were filled with joy. They entered the house and saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and they what? They worshiped him. Then they opened their treasure chests and gave him gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. I want you to notice that their whole journey started with and ended with worship. Now, before we dive any further into the story of the wise men, let's clear up a couple misconceptions that nativity scenes give us, that Christmas songs or traditions give us when it comes to the wise men. The most common misconception is that the wise men were kings. You hear Christmas carols like We Three Kings. That the wise men weren't actually kings. They were magi. They were scholars or astrologers from eastern lands. The wise men, they were known for studying the stars, understanding prophecies, interpreting dreams. Now, they were respected as advisors in royal courts, advisors to kings, but they actually weren't kings themselves. And also, scholars would believe that this was a much bigger group than just three men. We don't know how many wise men there were, but they would have had a whole entourage with them. I like to picture it like a scene from the movie Aladdin, like when Aladdin's granted his wish from the genie and he's rolling into the city and it's Prince Ali, fabulous Ali Ababa, like just kicking and elephants and whole entourage. Yeah, the Bible doesn't say that. That's my own view, but it would have been a whole entourage, a whole group of people, which explains why their arrival in Jerusalem, it disturbed King Herod. It disturbed all the people, the whole city. You don't cause that kind of commotion with just 3 guys quietly riding in on camels. Some traditions, they've even given these wise men names, but the Bible doesn't mention names. What it does tell us is this: a group of Gentile men, outsiders to the Jewish faith, they saw something extraordinary in the stars, and they journeyed from a far place, not just to investigate it, but to worship the newborn king. Which is what I love about this portion of the Christmas story. The wise men were essentially the Bible's first worship leaders to worship Jesus. And that's incredible. The Savior who was born, the King of the Jews, the ruler of heaven and earth. And you wanna know what's even more incredible? Is these weren't men who grew up with access to the scriptures. They didn't grow up their whole lives in the Jewish faith, hearing a promise of a Messiah on the way. But they saw a star, a light that was different than anything they had ever seen before, and they went on a journey to find Jesus. And their pursuit of this child of Jesus is such a powerful example for us, because their journey, it was filled with uncertainty. It was filled with challenges and even danger. It was a very politically tense time in this region. And so it had its danger, yet they didn't let anything distract them. They stayed focused on their purpose, which was worshiping the Savior. And that's the kind of heart that we're invited to have this Christmas, a heart that stays focused on what truly matters no matter what life tries to throw at us. You know, I think chaos is something that we can all relate to this time of year. Maybe for you, it's the chaos of your schedule. Just rushing between work deadlines, Christmas parties, kids' school performances, wondering when you're gonna have time to wrap the gifts that you haven't even bought yet. Maybe it's the chaos of emotions. For some of us, this season stirs up grief as we navigate the loss of someone we love that should be with us this Christmas. Maybe it's the chaos of anxiety, just the weight of trying to make everything perfect, keep everyone happy, or perhaps it's the chaos of family, just those awkward holiday conversations, those unresolved conflicts. For others, it might be the chaos of finances, just staring at the rising costs of everything, wondering how you're gonna make it work in the budget just to make Christmas perfect for everyone. Make it special. Whatever your chaos looks like, it has a way of pulling at us, doesn't it? It can leave us feeling overwhelmed. It can leave us feeling distracted. It can even disconnect us from the real reason we celebrate Christmas. But here's the good news. It's the story of the wise men. It reminds us that even in the middle of chaos, there's a better way. They didn't let the uncertainty of their journey derail them. They didn't let the distractions along the way steal their focus. They kept their eyes on the star. They kept their heart set on Jesus, and they kept their attitude rooted in worship. And that's an invitation for all of us to shift our focus from the chaos going on around us to the Savior born for us, the Savior born to us, to have a worshipful heart even when life feels anything but peaceful. So how do we follow the wise men's example in our own lives? Well, it starts with this. It starts with the same thing their journey started with, and that's seeking. So let's talk about what it looks like to worship with seeking. I was scrolling through Instagram, and this realtor was just absolutely crushing it with her social media content. She was doing an incredible job just with the videos she posted, because what she would do is the whole purpose of these videos was to walk people through a video tour of the home that she was trying to sell. But she would start each video out in front of the home, and she would say to the camera, if I was gonna play hide and go seek in this house, this is where I would hide. Now, I'm not in the market for a new house. I have no business watching home tours. And I'm also not an avid player of hide and go seek these days. It's not like I still play it, but it didn't stop me from watching the whole video through. Because on the off chance that I am in that house and I do play hide and go seek, I wanna know where the best hiding spots are. I wanna know where people might be if I'm the one looking for them. And it was brilliant. It was a genius idea, so creative. And the reason it was brilliant is because it captured something universal. The game of hide and go seek, it's one of the most popular games around the world. In fact, each one of us have probably played some version of it as a kid, right? I think it's just ingrained in us since childhood. But as we grow older, something shifts. I think we get better at the hiding our feelings, hiding our struggles, hiding our need for help, but we lose the art of seeking. And the wise men, they had mastered the seeking part. Look again at what it says in those first two verses. Let's pull that back up. It says, Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the reign of King Herod. And about that time, some wise men from eastern lands arrived in Jerusalem asking, where is the newborn king of the Jews? They arrive in Jerusalem with the Jewish people, those of the Jewish faith, and they are asking, where is your newborn king? Surely you will know, right? It goes on to say, we what? We saw his star as it rose, and we have come to worship him. The star has led us all the way here. Where is he? So these foreigners from this distant land show up in Jerusalem with this whole entourage. They come in causing a whole disturbance, a whole commotion. King Herod is disturbed. The people of Jerusalem are disturbed. So much so that Herod calls in these Jewish leaders. And he asks them, he says, where is the Messiah supposed to be born? And what's striking is that they didn't even have to go back to the text to look it up. They didn't have to go back to the scriptures. They quote Micah 5:2, which prophesied that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. So these leaders who grew up in the scriptures with the prophecies, with the hope that God would send a savior, they had been expecting him their whole lives for God to send the savior. And when they're there, when the wise men show up, when the star is there, do you know how far away these Jewish leaders, these Jewish people were from Bethlehem? 5 miles. They are 5 miles away. That's like an hour walk. I'm a fast walker, so I'll give you a little bit more time if you're not a fast walker. You can make 5 miles in under 2 hours. This is a small sacrifice, especially at this time. This is just a short stroll to a neighboring town. And they didn't go. They didn't take the time and bother to go and seek. They didn't go look and investigate if the greatest moment in history in heavens and in earth was happening in their own backyard. But meanwhile, these magi who didn't grow up in the Jewish faith, they traveled hundreds of miles on foot or on camels and through dangerous terrain because they believed the star marked the birth of someone extraordinary. And they came not just to see him, but with the whole intention to worship him. And church, this reminds us of an incredibly important truth. This reminds me of an important truth. Proximity to Jesus is not nearly as important as the pursuit of Jesus. Proximity to Jesus is not nearly as important as the pursuit of him. And for the wise men, their worship, it was a pursuit. It wasn't something they were just trying to fit in when it was convenient. It wasn't like they were like, 5 miles, that sounds like exercise. 5 miles, I don't have the time for that today. Someone else go. You tell me, okay? You tell me if the Savior was born 5 miles from here. I'm not walking right now. For the wise men, their motivation was driven by a deep desire to ensure they had an encounter with this child, with the future king. And I know for all of us, even for myself, sometimes I just try to come to grips with the fact that it's just gonna be chaotic this time of year. Like I just try to warn myself that I'm just gonna be busy and I'm not gonna have time for a whole lot. I'm not gonna have time to discipline myself or put disciplines into practice, but we need to be careful because it's so easy to get caught up in doing for Christmas that we forget about being with Jesus. You see, the pursuit, that intentional pursuit that we saw from the wise men, that's where their worship began. And so this Christmas week, in the middle of all the chaos, we have to ask ourselves, what are we seeking? What are we pursuing? Are we chasing after the next Christmas gift, that perfect Christmas gift? Are we chasing after the most Instagram-worthy, Christmassy moment that we can provide? Are we chasing after the pressure of just magical memories, or are we seeking the one who is the reason for it all? Because here's the truth, seeking Jesus takes intentionality. It doesn't just happen in our day, especially when the world is just trying to distract us. It's trying to pull at us in every direction. So how do we seek Jesus in the middle of the busyness? Now let me just give you a few practical ways. The first way, super easy. Just wake up a little bit earlier, a couple minutes earlier, 5 minutes earlier, and just start your day in prayer. Just start with a short prayer. Before you dive into the chaos of your schedule, just ask God to show up. Pause, ask him to reveal himself. Just say, help me feel your presence in the middle of everything I have going on today. Be there with me. Or if you're a parent, another thing you can do, or not even if you're not a parent, just end each day going through a portion of the Christmas story with your family, with your kids, on your own. In fact, if you download the Bible app, there are Christmas Advent plans, just plans, devotionals that you can follow each day that will walk you through the Christmas story. It's a great way to end the day with the family so that you're keeping your eyes set on the whole reason that Christmas even is in existence. And another way that you can that you can make sure that Christmas is at the forefront of your mind is just participate in worshiping with others. You're here today. Give it up for yourselves. You are here even in the middle of the busyness at church. But now come next week, come to one of our Christmas experiences. There's plenty of opportunities, but bring your family, your friends. You can worship together. But seeking Jesus doesn't mean abandoning everything else we have going on this season. It does mean shifting our focus, though. And rather than letting busyness consume us, let us point us back to the one who truly deserves our attention. Because the decorations, the gifts, the parties, all those things, they're all gonna fade away. But the moments we spend seeking Jesus, that's gonna leave a mark on our hearts that's gonna last far beyond December 25th. The wise men, they went on a journey to seek, but it didn't just stop there. They also showed us what it looks like to worship with joy. So another way that we can model their hearts this Christmas season is to worship with joyful expectations. I think kids' letters to Santa have been one of the best examples of high expectations. Are you a parent that had a kid that just, their Santa letter is like, wow, it's an incredible Santa letter, incredible request. I brought a couple of Santa letters that just really impressed me. This one here says, Dear Santa, what I want for Christmas is a little sister, but not right now, like in 2 years. Love, Samantha. Like, I really want that little sister, a little crazy right now, not now, but in 2 years, bring my sister. This one here, Dear Santa, you better bring my pony this year or there will be consequences. This is a kid who Santa has let down before, and they're making sure this year he doesn't do it. Now we can laugh at those requests because those kids have high expectations, right? Those are incredibly high hopes. But we see this same joyful expectation in the wise men. Look at verse 10 again, Matthew chapter 2, verse 10. It says, when they saw the star, they were filled with what? They were filled with joy. I want you to notice that verse doesn't say, when they saw the star, it brought a smile to their face. When they saw the star, it made them happy. No, it says when they saw the star, they were filled with joy. The wise men rejoiced because when they saw the star again, that was their sign that they were close to Jesus, the ultimate example of God's faithfulness. And remember, these wise men, they hadn't experienced Jesus' sacrifice yet. They hadn't seen the whole story play out. They didn't know that the price that this child would pay on their behalf. The excruciating, unfair pain and death that he would have on a cross someday. They didn't know the power that would be found in his resurrection or the depth of God's love that was going to be shown through him. They didn't know all these things, but you know who does? We do. We know those things. We've seen those things. So how much more should we live with joyful expectation? Joyfully expectant that God's gonna bring peace into our chaos. Joyfully expectant that he's gonna heal our broken relationships. Joyfully expectant that he'll meet us in our grief. Joyfully expectant that he's gonna provide for our needs. That he's gonna give our body the healing that it needs. That he's gonna provide even when finances are tight. Joyfully expectant. This kind of joy, joyful expectation, it's not naive. It doesn't ignore the reality of what we're going through. But what it does is it shifts our focus off the struggle and onto the one who's greater than our struggle, who's greater than our pain, who's greater than our circumstances. That's joyful expectation. It's a reminder that we can trust him to show up because he always has and he always will. Joyful expectation, it shifts our focus off of what's wrong and onto the one who makes all things right. It reminds us to trust in God's faithfulness even when we don't have all the answers. That's joyful expectation. So worship, it should start with seeking an intentional pursuit of Jesus, and we should worship with joyful expectation that God will see us through. But worship requires something else. And that something is letting go. It's laying it down. We're to worship with surrender. The wise men, they didn't just stop at following the star or rejoicing when they saw it again. When they finally encountered Jesus, this child, they bowed down before him. They presented their gifts. They surrendered themselves to him. Their worship wasn't just about what they could receive, it was about what they could give. And that's where worship becomes transformational. It's one thing to seek Jesus with joyful expectation, but it goes to a whole nother level when we lay everything down at his feet. Worship with surrender says, God, I trust you even when I don't understand. I give you my plans even when I'm afraid. I give you my fears even when I want control. I give you my hopes even when nothing feels hopeful. I give you it all, God. I give you my everything. That's the example we get from the wise men, that after their long journey, they finally encounter Jesus. They bow down before him. They surrender their gifts. They worship him as king. And then the Bible tells us something remarkable to wrap this portion of the story up. It's found in Matthew 2:12. I purposely kept it out of that beginning verse. I want us to look at it now. It says, when it was time to leave, they returned to their own country by what? Another route. They returned home another way, for God had warned them in a dream not to return to Herod. King Herod had given them clear instructions to report back to him. But after encountering Jesus, these wise men, they couldn't go back the same way they came. Their encounter with the Savior left them changed. Their worship redirected their path both literally and spiritually. A couple months ago, I was in this downtown area that was filled with all this tension. It was two opposing groups shouting at each other from across the street. And the atmosphere felt like it was just a spark away from just absolute chaos, like all of it just going up in flames. I mean, these two groups were angry. I saw angry faces, I saw shouting, yelling, banging of drums, banging of signs. It was mad, it was tense, it was disturbing, and I didn't feel safe. So I started moving away from that area. I started walking away down a street. And as I walked away a couple blocks, all of a sudden, I heard something that just stopped me. It was a voice. It was clear. It was strong. And they were singing a worship song called The Goodness of God. And it was coming from the place that I had just walked away from. That battleground of anger and hostility. And I heard the lyrics being sung. I heard, all my life, you have been faithful. And all my life, you have been so, so good. And with every breath that I am able, I'm going to sing of the goodness of God. And I had to go back and check it out. I mean, why was this song playing? And so I followed the sound, and what I found was one man standing in the middle of the tension, worshiping God with his whole heart on this little speaker. He didn't have a care in the world, his back to everything that was going on, his eyes closed, and he was just worshiping his Savior. And what had happened was incredible. That the anger, the noise, the banging of the signs and the drums, it all began to fade and be drowned out by just his voice. His worship shifted the atmosphere, and not because it changed the circumstances. I mean, those people were still all there behind him doing their thing. But it's because his worship brought peace into the chaos. And that moment was one of the most powerful worship experiences I had ever been a part of. It reminded me of inviting God into the middle of the mess, into the middle of the chaos, and surrendering everything to him. Worship with surrender says, God, I trust you even when I don't understand, even when I don't have all the answers. It's about having an encounter with the Savior, that same Savior that those wise men had an encounter with 2,000 years ago. Because when we surrender our hearts, when we bow before Jesus, we can't leave the same way that we came. Worship, it leaves us changed. That's the goodness of God. That's the whole reason we celebrate at Christmas, is to remind us just how good God is.